Hello, everybody. Welcome to the lyric breakdown for Auto Shoka. Now, hopefully, you're here from the reaction. If you're not, definitely check the description for the reaction video. Hopefully, I get a much more clear picture of her meaning behind this song. Definitely let me know in the comments at the end of this how right or wrong I am. Definitely let me know how you interpret this. But yeah, let's get into it. No matter how much I cling on wanting to die, it's all meaningless. I don't know that everything with a form will eventually come to an end. With these absurd lyrics, inebriated and at its worst, just as they are, there are countless lives that cannot be saved. Clinging on wanting to die. I mean, you can already tell that she has a very self-loathing depression that she's dealing with. I think a lot of us don't really feel like we have a place, or, we're just not really happy with the trajectory of our lives. I feel like we can kind of relate to this self-loathing. We just hate being in this situation. If you're going through a lot of struggles and a lot of burdens and you feel like the weight of the world's on your shoulders, wanting to die is kind of like, I don't want to feel this way type of way of thinking. And yeah, wanting to die, I get it. I just don't want to deal with all these problems. I just don't want to be here. Everything with a form eventually comes to an end. It's unfortunately one of the two realities of life is death and taxes. So yeah, everything does eventually come to an end. So yeah, I mean, I guess maybe in that sense, wanting to die is meaningless because you want something that is kind of the reality is that it's going to happen eventually. So what's the point of wanting it when it's going to happen at some point? With these absurd lyrics inebriated at its worst, just as they are, there are countless lives that cannot be saved. Maybe for my interpretation of this is that she does sing about her struggles from, I think, a younger person's point of view. With almost all music, you can always relate in some aspect. By voicing her struggles, by voicing her burdens, her challenges, people that do listen to her, somebody out there is able to relate to that, can parallel it to their life in some aspect. By allowing yourself to be vulnerable, it lets others know that they're going through the same struggle and that they're not alone in that struggle. There are some people out there that this music will definitely help. I can't imagine the amount of people that Linkin Park saved with their music. So I'm definitely sure that her voicing her difficulties in life through her music, I'm sure somebody out there, it's definitely saved. It's definitely helped. It's definitely given some comfort to. This last line, I think, is really sad because I think this is kind of the reality is that regardless of who this music might help and save, that there are so many people, countless people, that will never be reached. It could just be how widespread, like I said, Linkin Park has helped me, and I'm sure it's helped countless people, but their music doesn't reach everywhere. So I'm sure there's somebody, I'm sure there's people in Japan that've never heard of Linkin Park, and maybe those people that didn't make it, I'm sure if Linkin Park maybe have reached them, that maybe it could have changed the trajectory of their lives. It could have helped them in that troubling time. So it could be just it could be that one aspect where the message isn't widespread across the entire globe, or more likely it could just be that there are a countless number of people suffering and that you're never going to be able to save everybody. That's definitely the more likely answer. By hurting others, are you looking to be rewarded? Saying just be happy or something like that. Once again, swayed by the early summer breeze, I end up singing about my arrogant ego. I don't know the right answer, so tell me. Saying just be happy or something like that. I feel like people don't really realize how that affects people psychologically. If somebody is going through a troubling time and maybe they kind of reach out to you, maybe they kind of allow themselves to be vulnerable for a second, to give them such a silly and pointless answer of saying just be happy. Oh, it'll be okay. Oh, just smile. Oh, you'll get over it. Like, that doesn't help anybody. That is such a way of you not caring about what they're going through. It really minimizes the struggle that they're feeling, the sadness that they're going through, the burdens that they're experiencing. For example, like if she's going through where maybe she doesn't feel like she's accepted and she opens up to somebody. If that person says, "Oh, well, just start acting like this. Well, don't voice your opinion. Just be quiet, and do what everybody else does. It really minimizes what she opened up to you about. It really makes that individual feel isolated. It really does have psychological ramifications because now that person is less likely to open up in the future. That person is less likely to open up to you in the future, so that's one less person they have to open up to. They're not going to want to open up to anybody else in the future because they opened up to somebody that they thought they could, and then that person just tells them, shut up, pretty much. So yeah, they're less likely to do that because now they feel more isolated than ever. So there are definitely some ramifications to giving such childish answers. Just be happy. Doesn't really help anybody. That's like telling somebody that's really upset or you might have wronged to just calm down. That doesn't help anybody. That just upsets him even more. And I'm sure we can all relate to that. I ended up singing about my arrogant ego. I think this is what I was kind of mentioning in the reaction, where I feel like when looking at analytics, how there could be definitely generational differences, where the older generation, where she speaks from a young generation aspect, and she has more of a rebellious, in my opinion, outlook on life and way of going about things. I'm sure people of an older generation or people that kind of follow the status quo will look at her as arrogant because she's being rebellious, she's not conforming, she's not trying to fit in. People might perceive her as having an ego, thinking she's better than everybody because she doesn't conform to their idea of how she should act. I don't really think she has an ego. I think she just really creates a dialogue. And I think the dialogue is social norms, how people should act. I think there's definitely going to be a lot of issues, a lot of conflict with an older generation opposed to a younger generation, where the younger generation might not want to follow the same thing and do the same thing the older generation did. And the older generation feels that they should because that's how they were raised, that's how they went through life. And so I think it's definitely a discussion that I think probably need to be had. I do think maybe the younger generation probably wants a little bit more individuality and less conformity. Now, it's not really my opinion to say whether that's right or wrong, because I think there's good and bad in both aspects. From an outsider looking in, I think it's really cool. There are certain social aspects that I love looking at when it comes to Japan, about how everybody doesn't litter, how everybody at least is generally polite, whether they mean that or not, but at least they're polite to your face. Just even simple things about how when you're on a train, you don't really talk, you're very quiet because it's rude to those around you to be loud. And like, those are certain things that I really love. Also, probably sure there's a lot of things about Japan. Okay, you have to be like everybody else, or you're going to be shunned. You're going to be, I like being an individual, and I like being able to express myself however I want and not really worry about who I'm going to upset or who is going to accept me or not, So individuality is nice, but there are certain conformalities that I really love. There's good and bad in both. The words I once loved have been destroyed. I used to believe that someday I would be rewarded. This voice I've built up is a wrong answer for the world. I hate that face of not knowing anything. No matter how many times, tens, hundreds, thousands of times, I want to die. Oh, Lord. Oh, man. The words I once loved have been destroyed. I used to believe that someday I would be rewarded. I'm always going to look at it from an aspect of Otto not feeling she's accepted in the society that she was raised in. I think I was given a little bit of backstory about when she was maybe growing up, how she tends to have a little bit of a deeper voice, her being maybe bullied for it, maybe her being ridiculed. So I feel like, I don't know to what aspect bullying happens when it comes to Japanese schools. I feel like, and maybe that could just be why she doesn't really show her face. By this, the words I once loved have been destroyed. I feel like that is just, like I was saying before, about how the older generation, I feel like, would definitely have an issue with her type of music, her type of messaging, her type of rebellious aspect. And by that, the words being destroyed, her words are what allow her to express herself, allow her to let everybody know where she is, her mindset, being able to express things she wouldn't otherwise be comfortable expressing. She expresses it through music. That's a great outlet. That's why we all love music, because us ourselves to connect with the artist and connect with the message. But society, like I even seen videos on YouTube about why Otto was like, why Usewa, for example, was like the most hated song in Japan, which I think is crazy. But I think that shows that there is a lot of pushback on the words that she expresses, the message she tries to get out there. I'm thinking her way of expressing herself is being destroyed because, society doesn't want her to express herself, at least in the way that she's doing it. I used to believe that someday I would be rewarded. And maybe by being rewarded, she's referring to that she would be accepted, that she would find others that are going through the same struggle, that she would maybe spark a dialogue, spark a change in how society perceives her message. Maybe with more open arms, for example. The voice that I built up is the wrong answer for this world. I mean, she's built up this idea that she's just a rebellious teenager, young adult, doesn't like how maybe the society that she's raised in is being operated. She doesn't like all the social norms. She doesn't like how there's certain expectations. Maybe that's the voice she's built, is she's a rebellious teenager. I hate the face of not knowing anything. This could be a little bit of internal conflict. She doesn't know if she should maybe keep expressing herself in the same fashion, or maybe it's not being received in the way that she hoped. So maybe there's an internal conflict if maybe she's wrong in the way that she expresses herself. That could be a little bit of an internal conflict. I was a fool, a puddling, miniature, boxed-up garden, repeating self-pleasure to cover up my wounds, a scornful side glance. Even if I lined up with words lovelier than a pre-dawn dream, fireworks in the city withered beautifully. I am not there, always too late. I mean, her wounds could be a multitude of things. It could just be not being heard, not being accepted, being ridiculed because of the way she expresses herself. I mean, her wounds are a multitude of things. And self-pleasure is in a way of kind of self-reassurance. Like, okay, society is saying that they don't like the way that I'm acting. But you know what? It's not me that's wrong, it's society. I'm expressing myself, voicing myself in the way that I feel comfortable voicing myself. It's not me, it's society. So it's like you're giving yourself this pep talk and you're motivating yourself to keep going. I don't think she's really wrong in this. Words I couldn't say before keep pouring out endlessly. Even if the wishes are granted, nothing really changes. Promises once made get forgotten. Unable to hold back, here I am alone. No matter how many times, thousands, millions, billions of times, won't you kill me? She's finally able to open up and say how she really feels. Maybe she's hit that point of no return. Maybe she just can't keep it in any longer. I mean, we can only suppress ourselves so long before we eventually just break down and let it out. That's why you gotta talk to somebody. You gotta be able to release that pressure that we're under. Even if the wishes are granted, nothing really changes. We are a very, very minuscule part of the greater machine that is society. It's very rare for an individual to make a massive change, a massive impact. She does have the ability to use her platform to express how maybe a younger generation feels. And I'm sure there's a lot of people around her age range, maybe even older, maybe younger, that feel similar. So she does have a greater opportunity to make real change. In the grand scheme of things, society is such a massive thing and she's a small part of it, Just like a politician, they can promise you a lot, but nothing really changes. Oh, yeah, speaking of politician, promises once made get forgotten. Yep. If ethics created reasoning, is this hoarse voice righteousness? If correctness always turns into kindness, tell me, answer me. If something is ethically good, ideally it would create reasoning as to why that would be the more acceptable answer. Is this hoarse voice righteousness? When it comes to like Japanese society, I feel like maybe she's saying, people with a hoarse voice are kind of, losing their voice because they're always telling her, they're always screaming at her what she's doing isn't ethical, isn't the right reasoning, isn't good. You're not acting like society wants you to act right. you know? So maybe that's what she's talking about, righteousness. Society is telling her it's not right, it's not ethically good, it's not the right reasoning with how she's carrying herself, how she's expressing herself. So maybe that's what she's saying, that society is losing its voice because they're trying to be righteous in suppressing her message, maybe? She's a hard one to break down. I feel like generally the overarching message that I get with Otto is she doesn't feel like she ever really belongs in the society that she's in. And she does a good job at expressing that. I feel like they always want you to conform to societal standards. And I mean, that's to the same extent in America in certain aspects. You know, she's always the rebellious individual that she is, and society doesn't really like that because she tries to have a voice, you know, about certain aspects about society that she doesn't maybe like, she doesn't want to follow. And I'm sure society is probably saying, well, if you start thinking that and you start using your platform to spread that message, well, then other people are going to feel that same way, and then it's going to make society kind of turn upside down. I guess if there's an artist that you feel kind of goes against the grain, it's definitely Otto, and that's one thing I definitely like, is I like artists that don't fit the mold. Yeah, I just really like Otto, man. She gives you a perspective from a younger generational standpoint, and I think it's really important to understand how society has changed over the years. Speaks in a way where even as an outsider, it gives me perspective on society, where like in Usewa, where not wanting to follow the social norms and wanting to be a little bit more of an individual and express yourself in a way that maybe society doesn't really accept. I think it's important that everybody is able to express themselves as an individual, regardless if maybe that might not be acceptable from a societal standpoint, as long as it's not hurting anybody, which I don't really think the way that she expresses herself is in a bad way. Like I said, I really hope it sparks a conversation. The younger generation and maybe the older generation can kind of have some dialogue and maybe see things from each other's perspectives. Yeah, I don't think she's nearly as bad as some people make it out to be about Usewa was the worst, you know, most conflicting song in Japanese society. I think Ada's great. I love her voice. I love how she does her music videos. I love the fact that she remains anonymous. And I definitely think that her music can definitely help a lot of the younger generation. I'm sure the younger generation probably doesn't necessarily feel like they have as much of a say and as much of a voice as the older generation does. And yeah, I do feel like she's a voice of a generation. Her generation, but definitely a voice of a generation. I think she's going to make a huge impact, probably more of an impact than she feels like she does. Let me know how you guys interpret this. Would definitely love to know. And as always, I will see you guys in the next video. Later.